Man's on a schedule.
Yep. I'm old. I got the night fighting against me.
I've still got to go get drunk with my friends.
Yeah. And I got to wake up early.
Yep. I hate waking up early. All right. Hello there, everyone. Welcome to another fancy installment of Tapcaf Transmissions. I am Corey, joined as always by Mr. Eckhart's Ladder. How are you doing tonight, Justin?
I'm well. Been through an adventure, a 2-year adventure. It ends tonight.
Yeah. And joining us to end our new Jedi Order adventure is the man who started with us. We have Ilkin of Kings and Generals. How are you doing, Ilkin?
I am very good. I had
Closer to the mic, sweetheart.
Sorry? Was it loud?
No, not loud
You're
enough.
Too quiet.
Should I speak up?
Close to the mic, speak up, whichever you prefer.
I prefer to speak up.
I turned you up and then you moved farther away from your mic, so...
Let me just increase.
All right, but our topic for the night, if Ilkin's going to not answer the question, is, of course, the new Jedi Order, the Unifying Force. Like Ek alluded to, we've been doing the new Jedi Order series since, I believe, March 2022. So here we are 2.5 years later with the thrilling conclusion of the 19-book series. We've also done the comics in there. So a lot to talk about as we conclude my quintessential Star Wars series, at least. But any news we want to cover first? We got Skeleton Crew coming for next week. We'll have a whole episode
coming a day early.
Yeah. A
A
whole day.
Yeah. So it's on, is it Tuesday and it'll ordinarily be Wednesday?
It's Monday, it'll normally be Tuesday.
Or is it just like late on that day?
No, it's actually like a full day earlier for this one.
Yeah.
I wonder why.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure.
They're doing the Ahsoka time slot, but they're doing a day earlier to premiere. I thought they were moving it up because, like, that's going to be Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve for at least those two.
Or for... Well, the first episode is next week, right?
Yeah.
They're doing Ahsoka time slot with better choreography.
Right. So it'll be the episodes... What? It'll be 3, 4... It'll be 5 and 6, which are the bad days.
Yeah. So I thought that's why they were moving it up, but they're only moving up the premiere. So those ones are still on days.
Yeah, I like the idea of a Star Wars Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve episode.
The kid's going to be up that late, though?
No, I'll probably watch it with him the next day.
There you go. Also known as Christmas.
Yep.
So somebody said that it will remind of the holiday special, so it might be a good thing to watch with kids.
Yeah. Although in reality, I think the holiday special was like released in November, like when it actually came out.
Yeah, but like I've been watching Hallmark movies since before Halloween.
Did you watch the one with not Hallmark, but the Netflix one with
No.
Admiral Holdo? Oh, it was really good.
Only Hallmark.
You got to watch the one with Admiral Holdo and what's his name? Not Thor, but Thor's brother.
Oh, the other Hemsworth?
Liam? Yeah, Liam. Yeah, it was really good. I liked that one, and I watched I did watch one of the Hallmark ones. I can't remember which one, but yeah.
So we're gonna have our annual Hallmark Christmas movie podcast in December. But for now, Ilkin, any thoughts on the intermediary periods of NJO? Because we had you on for Vector Prime and I believe for Star by Star, but that leaves like 6 books since then. If you wanted to give any overall thoughts on the series as we get into our final discussion.
Overall, it's just too long.
It's too long?
Yeah, I have read it, the whole series maybe 4 times by now. I feel like just doesn't cover much for this number of books.
Okay.
Like it doesn't mean that the series is bad. It's just over long for no reason.
Which books are we cutting?
I can't say that you have to cut in an entire book, but maybe some events.
There needs to be a restructuring. I think personally. I mean, there doesn't need to be because it's not happening, but I think there could have been a restructuring. Also, Corey, I watched The Merry Gentleman with Chad Michael Murray as well. That one was good. I think you were talking
Shame
about
what
that.
happened to them on Brilliant.
Yeah.
But
And
length
it's really
aside, and this book was
really
500
difficult.
pages.
Really
So
difficult to recommend, to be honest. Like, if you want to recommend it to someone, 18 books, no.
Yeah, it's a tough. Well, the entire series plus a decade of other books, and expanded universe, rightly or wrongly, probably rightly. A lot of people see it as kind of schlock. So it's like, yeah, you want to read through this long 19-book series. Yeah, you gotta read every tie-in book ever. This one, Luke tries to fuck a computer. This one, Princess Leia gets hit by the memory gun, or the honesty gun. This one, yeah, it's like there's a lot.
but
The
do
Emperor
you
comes
need
back
to
and-
read the other books to enjoy New Jedi Order? Like, I started halfway through NJO, and I got in kind of fine. So, like, that's where my Star Wars journey really began.
That's a problem, actually, because more or less, status quo doesn't change in Star Wars, right? You
Yeah.
can start it at any book, and kind of, if you have watched the original trilogy, you know what's going on, more or less.
Yeah, I mean, you could. I don't know why you would. Like, so now that we've reread it again, I like the New Jedi Order. I know, Corey, for you, you said it's like your quintessential expanded universe content. For me, it's not personally. I enjoy it, but I would never recommend a new person rush through the other content to get to the NJO. Like, it's a gold mine at the end. And again, I'm not discounting your view. I think it's probably due somewhat to nostalgia, which, like, for me, the first books that I read were Young Jedi Knights, and I love them. I'm not going to pretend that they're objectively the best, but
Right. So I'm not saying when I think like that New Jedi Order is the quintessential Star Wars to me, because I think like I've read through them all and then I ranked it and this is what ended up on top. Just this is what got me into Star Wars in a real way. So like it's what I probably know best. It's what I am generally most interested in. But I definitely don't think it's like the best Star Wars that's out there. And like I have a friend who was interested in getting to the NJO and was like starting to read some of the other stuff. Like he started with the Thrawn trilogy and he said that he was interested to get to this at some point. And when I told him like if you want to read all the connected stuff and then also read it, you need to kind of read everything, and then it's a very long series, and that kind of killed his interest. But I do think that it's probably too long. Like, especially since it is so serialized, like you have different perspective characters in every book almost, but like the Wedge stuff is kind of a standalone, but it's not like the Galactic Civil War where like the war is this backdrop for all these other stories that you're telling. It is very much like you read Vector Prime, then you read Dark Tide, then you read da-da-da-da-da until you get to Unifying Force, and it's all like it is when Star Wars went to this very serialized version of the expanded universe that has its own benefits and drawbacks for sure.
But what I was, what I was thinking reading this book, especially towards the end, was, and it kind of sucks to say, outside of the main characters, like how few good character moments are actually in this book. Especially like Ben comes back and like it happens off screen. He's just on like Mara's lap the next scene, or like Talon Card is there, and Shady Dukal, who's one of my favorite expanded universe characters, is there, but like it's like they're there in name. Like Talon Card is there in name, but really they could have changed Talon Card's name to anybody else, and you wouldn't miss that much. I think like the Jason they do well with, Jaina they do well with, Luke less so. But like if I were to redo the New Jedi Order and keep the crazy length, which I see the appeal to it.
Do you think Luke should have died?
I
think
no, I don't think so.
No?
I think like I like how the book ends, where the book is almost like it almost breaks the fourth wall at the end, where it like I gotta watch or read the roundtable thing that I know they put out with the New Jedi Order, but it definitely feels like they were giving themselves an out to like stop. And at the end, C3PO and R2D2 kind of like wink at the reader and like, hey, next time you see us, like it might be 100 years in the future, we might have some different adventures and some, this isn't the first time, it's been the end of something and we'll be on to something new. I don't know if you guys read it like that, but to me that was like, we might be like, this might be it, we might be moving on to something else.
Yeah, there was the lines from Luke at the end of the Galactic Civil War. It still felt like there was stuff to do. It was a transitionary period, but now it feels like we're not in such an uncertain galaxy. So there was definitely opening the door to have a bigger gap to something like the Legacy period, and just say that the interim was and nothing interesting happened. But obviously that isn't the direction they went.
So was New Jedi Order books so successful that they decided to write more?
I don't know. I don't think it was
Ever... But
I was gonna say I think it was probably more the prequels were doing.
Mhm.
Were it made it hard
Right.
not to be publishing Star Wars stuff.
Yeah, like I always read that, they meant for this to be the finale of Legends, but like no, they were never not going to keep publishing stuff. Like this was Del Rey's first time with the license. They didn't buy the license to do one storyline and then say, we're done with the cash cow. So like I could see a world where they go and the next novels are kind of where Legacy is, but I don't see, and maybe they leave like the progression of the story alone for a while and they go back in time and focus only on the prequels. But I don't see a world where like this was actually supposed to be the end of the universe. That's just not how this soap opera of a galaxy works. When it makes that much money, when they just get the license, there's absolutely no fucking way.
Yeah, no, you're right. Although it would have been interesting to see, how they would have tried to wrap it up if George Lucas was going to do his episode 7. Would they have bothered, or like would they have just really done what they had to do with the Clone Wars and like try to fit everything together? Although it would have been impossible.
Yeah, I feel like it would have been similar reset to what we got anyways.
Yeah.
But I guess we should maybe talk a little bit about the plot. Like it is very much one. It's a long book, but like actual plot wise, there's so much that gets wrapped up of like, and this shows up, and this shows up, and this shows up, and this shows up. Like the actual plot is Zonoma Sekot comes back. Everyone tries to figure out what to do with this. Like the Yuzhan Vong start imploding. There's a Shamed One revolt on Yuzhan Tar, which is getting back to being Coruscant. And we have the Battle of Mon Calamari, which leads into the Battle of Coruscant, or Muscave, one of the moons of Coruscant. And then you kind of deal with what do we do with the Yuzhan Vong after the war, because now they have lost. So, like, as far as the actual plot goes, it's fairly simple.
Yeah, and like it starts off with it ends up being not super relevant, but it starts off with the prisoners. Basically, they're trying to rescue prisoners, including Judder Page and Pash Kraken. Try to, it's more of an emotional thing to try to rally systems because they do know this big final confrontation is coming up. I gotta say, the Battle of Mon Calamari ended up being kind of the star, like in terms of like space battles.
Yeah.
I remember Coruscant being the big one, but really it's Mon Calamari. After that, everyone kind of scatters. But if you like space battles, the Mon Calamari one's probably the biggest you ever get in the books, I'd say.
Biggest in terms of like ship number of ships?
Number of ships and just like overall scale as well, just like the way it's written. So for those who haven't read the book, the Galactic Alliance kind of coaxes the Yuzhan Vong into like one. Well, there's like some feints back and forth, but the Yuzhan Vong and the Galactic Alliance both sort of allow themselves to fight this one final battle. With the Galactic Alliance's plan is to sort of counterattack and take Coruscant. And the Yuzhan Vong basically take every single ship they have.
So do you think Alliance wants to take Coruscant back, or is it them to kill Shimra?
I think that they want to take Coruscant back because they see Coruscant like a symbol of power.
Yeah, so we kind of open it hearing that the Battle of Ebac 9 was that Destiny's Way? Whichever book that was a year ago at this point. and it's been weeks, maybe months, since anyone's heard from the Luke's group on Zonoma Sekot. So they've been kind of at a standstill, but also in the direction of winning the war against the Yuzhan Vong. So for them, on the Galactic Alliance's side, Coruscant is how they prove we are back in control. We can start like going back to some kind of normalcy. Like we can. That is what means the war is over. Because some people were saying EBAC 9 had ended the war, that it's all been just mop up since then, but like they need Coruscant back to show they're back. For the Vong, the loss of Shimra, like I don't think the Galactic Alliance necessarily realized how big the loss of Shimra would be, even though it was obviously like if they're given the opportunity, they take it.
They didn't realize
because the plot line about rescuing the hostages, like it basically the idea there is that if we stop the sacrifice of the hostages, we will number one gain a bunch of people who will lead our troops. Number two, it will deal damage to Yuzhan Vong in terms of their susceptibility to their religion, I guess.
I don't think they realize how much, like, even by the end, I don't think they understand, like, the religious fervor of the Yuzhan Vong. Like, I don't think they realize that the final attack is predicated on this big sacrifice, nor, like Corey said, that, like, they don't realize that Shimra is sort of supposed to be their emissary between the gods and them, and that there's never been the Yuzhan Vong without a supreme overlord. To me, it seemed like it was more about, like, rallying support for the final battle.
Well, so when Paige and Kraken are like Kraken the Younger are on Selvaris, they do this like stealth mission or not a stealth mission, but like a frantic Mission Impossible escape, trying to get a little rat back to Coruscant or back to the Galactic Alliance with some coordinates.
It's actually a very well written scene. I loved it.
Yeah, the Selvaris part's a fun one, but they get they actually directly talk about why they want to go for this particular convoy, and it's not just because General Kraken's son is there.
And Gutter Page, he was there at the.
Well, Aaron Kraken doesn't give a fuck about Gutter Page. But why this convoy? The answer is simple. Because many of the prisoners, Captain Page and Kraken among them, are desperately needed to rally support for planetary sectors on the verge of acquiescing to the enemy. In addition, because their cover will be compromised, the agents acting within the Priest Brigade who help provide the intelligence will also have to be extracted, etc. So, like, they're still thinking in terms of we're going to have to do some other operations. Like, we need to kind of follow what Han and Leia have been doing, where for the prior 3 books, Han and Leia had been going around the Galactic Alliance trying to establish these little cells in line with what the Reborn Rebellion are supposed to be doing as well. So they don't seem to be 100% sure what the outcome is going to be, but like that's before they are thinking it's time to attack Coruscant as well.
Yeah, and then they sort of the Vong and the Galactic Alliance sort of play in, like they both kind of want the final battle. And
we can't do any more books. It's got to be decided in this one.
We're getting tired of this, and they even like acknowledge like. Which, to me, it's still a little unclear why the GA wanted the final battle, because it seems to me if the Yuzhan Vong had kept pushing, they would have got knocked out, basically. But the Vong leave, and we do get those cool. We get to see, I think we see Guardian and Viscount fighting by each other?
Yeah, they're
pretty cool.
I
think they're both at Mon Calamari.
Yeah, and they have... So they basically just name drop all the ships.
I see it differently. I see, in my opinion, that Alliance at this point is not winning the war.
They certainly think they are after EBAC.
Maybe, but like in terms of forces and in terms of what they can build easily, etc., it just seems that there is no way long-term Alliance can win without Zonoma Sekot, obviously.
So they talk about it a bit, and so they think that they are winning right now, but that if they give the Yuzhan Vong time to regroup, then they'll be able to grow more ships faster than the Galactic Alliance would be. Like the Yuzhan Vong are losing at the moment, but given enough time, they'd be able to get back on top because they haven't really had a chance to establish themselves. They just grew so fast. And there's also just a cost to leaving planets in their hands that are in their hands right now. Like Coruscant is already fairly ruined. Like a bunch of other planets are fairly ruined. More people will get enslaved. So like I do think they have the upper hand right now, but they also need to minimize as much damage as possible.
Yeah, because they kind of feel like the same thing is going to happen with what was with the Empire, where they strike a big blow and then the Empire retreats and kind of just it's a big mess. But the Vong have the ability to, like, the biggest thing with the Yuzhan Vong is they're running out of warriors, which I think always would have been a problem. But they probably like would have found a way to, because they're always abducting people and using the slave seeds, so they probably would have found a way to man their ships as well. But if they would have had the chance to grow more duriams and more yamos and stuff, it could have been a problem. I remember there's one point where one of the pilots, like, I thought we already won the war after evac. Like, not quite.
But we do get a lot of scenes with Traced, or a couple scenes at least, where he's thinking about, like, how do you beat someone that just won't stop?
Yeah.
And, like, we know the Vong are running out of warriors, but they have still managed to kill 300... Like, the death toll in the war is 365 trillion. So Traced is also wondering, do you stop? And I know both of you think no. So that's...
I mean, I don't actually think no. I think, like, Alpha Red is the stupidest idea ever. It's like the first so the Yuzhan Vong, we know, are very similar to humans in biology, some slight differences. They've created a virus which can kill every Yuzhan Vong thing and also kill their technology. They want to spread it across the galaxy where I'm sure it won't mutate. The first planet they drop it on, it's already killing things from the galaxy, like native to the galaxy. So clearly it was going to end up killing everything.
So funny thing is, killing the planet that was the closest to not being Vong formed. So one of the few planets that Yuzhan Vong don't want to change.
Yep.
So kind of ironic that that's where the possible genocide of the Yuzhan Vong starts.
Yeah, that's not great.
When they started working on Alpha Red, which is the Galactic Alliance intelligence project that's also working with, like, the Chiss to just make a bioweapon that will target all of the Yuzhan Vong tech. I think it might be Kip, but in that one of the first council meetings, he says, I may not know about this, but I know the term blowback. And that's exactly what happened. Like, they use this thing once, it kills Malik Carr, who's making a cameo after his prior shame in a different book, and then it just wipes out the Kalula flying beetles, or whatever the hell they're called.
Yeah.
A very sad loss for the galaxy.
Yeah, well, they had this special thing that was supposed to happen.
That's a thing. So another planet that surrendered to the Yuzhan Vong, Obra Sky,
yeah,
the one with the library. So the event on Kalula is important for the librarians of Obra Sky who already have surrendered to Yuzhan Vong. My point is that basically the Alliance releasing the Red Alpha kind of proves the point that Alliance is not good, right?
Well, they're also working with the Imperials.
Like, it seems like Diff Scour, I don't know, like, it almost seems like he kind of released it without, I don't know, I don't think Cal almost was in on it.
I think he was.
It's a plausible deniability, right?
Maybe, yeah. Although it's just, he gets to retire. Like, he's not shot in the back of the head somewhere. He just gets to retire.
I feel like Cal had to be in on it.
Gets to be the next.
Like, Han and Leia
my favorite side character.
Han and Leia are on that mission on Kalula, and they were with Rar, the Bothan, Rar, and he's there on the assignment to, like, see what happens with Alpha Red. And later on, Cal tells Traced or Scar or someone else, like, okay, no, we're not doing Alpha Red now. Like, it seems like he allowed this test to happen.
So, talking about Raj, he probably makes one of the worst jokes Star Wars history. I don't know if you guys have noticed that.
No.
So during the mission, someone is like, if you do something, only your grandchildren will see it, etc.
Mhm.
And he looks at Han and he's like, yeah, I will not allow my children to fight in the war. something, something along these lines.
I don't get it.
Anakin died.
Oh,
Yeah, he was
okay.
clearly calling Han and Leia bad parents, but we
Yeah,
already
I didn't
know
get
Han
that.
and Leia were bad parents.
Yeah.
I was like, oof. By the way, Lucino is very good. I kind of forget because he doesn't have as many books as some other Star Wars writers.
hmm
Especially in main character interactions, he is really good.
Yeah.
At the start, the interactions between Han and Leia, chef's kiss, incredibly.
Yeah, I thought this was one of the better written books overall.
Mhm.
And I do wonder what fewer writers could have made made the series look like. Especially because it does, it's thinking back at the, at the series. There are definitely some notable moments, like the Battle of Ithor is one that for me is really notable. Ebac 9, Star by Star. But I do feel like the trilogy as a whole gets a bit mucky, where it's hard to remember, like, oh, what point in the war did this happen? What point in the series did this even happen? And I do kind of wonder whether more careful planning could have helped that, maybe.
Well, they kind of managed to remind you of what's going on over and
Mhm.
over again.
Yep.
Like Star Wars books are good in that regard because, like, you get
Yeah.
reminded about stuff. Like even if you don't are not told outright. For instance, the catastrophe the Hapen fleet suffered in the previous, right?
Mhm.
You get reminded about that. I don't know. The fact that Jason was tortured, you get reminded about that. So it's they do good job keeping you somewhat in the loop, I
Mhm.
guess.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think for me, the Yuzhan Vong, like, I'm just not as interested in them and their perspectives because they're pretty much always just the enemy. There's some exceptions. No Manor is pretty interesting, but like a lot of the Yuzhan Vong perspective chapters, I kind of just like,
I am almost the
Yeah.
opposite, where I think like a lot of the other Yuzhan Vong, like Mison or not Mison Quad, fuck the other shaper from the prior book who dies on an MC
Nian,
dot.
Nian something.
Nenyim?
And yeah.
Nenyim. Like I really enjoy her as a character. Early on, I like Nominor as a character, but my problem with Nominor is that by the middle of the war, you know who he is, and then there's all these moments of like, oh, is this different for him? And it's never different. He doesn't go anywhere, and that like it makes sense for his character story, but I lose interest in him and his perspective when it's like I know within 3 sentences if he says something, he's going to try to fuck whoever he's talking to over, which he does repeatedly in this book. Like he tries to send Jason, Jaina, Han, Luke, Leia, Mara, every main character into a trash compactor.
They're not gonna die.
Like fucking it. Like this doesn't work out well for you. He should know it's not going to work out well for him. And then he's like, okay, fair play, you got me. I'm going to just die on this ship.
Like he's basically what Scorpion is that tail, right? I have to sting you, right?
Yeah.
That's
Mhm.
what Numenor is more or less. At some point, when he rejoins the Shamed Ones,
I like that part.
there is this Shamed One warrior,
Kunra.
Kuna.
Kunra.
I kind of wanted that guy
Awesome.
to get more screen time, I guess, because like at some point he takes over the heretics and he knows that Nomano is like obviously the one who betrayed them.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But he doesn't get more to do, like
No.
just a very interesting like moment when you see the power shift and it doesn't lead anywhere.
Yeah, I really liked the moment where he is like disgusted by what Shimra's doing to, like, he is self-serving completely above all else, but he does also seem to care somewhat about the Yuzhan Vong as a species. And like when Shimra is completely destroying Yuzhan Tar, or he's ordering the Duryam to destroy Yuzhan Tar, he's like, yeah, this is so fucking dumb. And then he like joins the shamed ones again. You're like, okay, like, but then like seconds later, he's like, he literally cuts the neck of a shamed one to try to spurt blood all
Yeah,
over him
to
so he
hide
can
himself.
try to hide himself. So yeah, it's I don't know. He's an interesting character. You're right. It is a bit much. I would have liked if he would have had some redemption at the end and then killed himself or allowed him not returned. Like if he had, you're right. I don't like how he tries to betray Han and Leia one final time.
He is probably the one who suffers the most from series being longer.
Yeah, I think that's true. Like, I definitely agree that like James Luceno is definitely one of the stronger writers we have in Star Wars, and especially tying so many things together. That's always been his strength. But coming in at the tail end of a 19-book series, there's so much you have to do. I think that's the biggest weakness to having a series this long. Like I always kind of make fun of Zonoma Sekot as this kind of Deus Ex thing, but they really do set it up. Like it makes sense how it ends the way it does. But at the same time, like Justin was saying earlier, you have so little time to spend with all these characters that they kind of feel like these short cameos. There's not a lot of great character moments. I think actually more than anyone else.
Who is Trisina Lobe?
No idea.
She doesn't need to be anyone. She's fine.
The thing is, you don't know who she is to an extent that every time she's mentioned, the author is like Jedi Knight Trisina Lobe.
Yeah.
Like, he has to say that she's a Jedi Knight.
Well, I think there's a bigger example of that in this book where like an absolute nobody of a Jedi gets more mentions than anyone else. It's fucking Mark Remedjev. Where he's like in every list of Jedi, he's like all your favorites: Luke, Mara, Mark Remedjev, like the president of Russia. Remember when Luke, Mara, and Dmitry Medvedev were all meeting up at the conclave on ZenMCCon?
But I just googled Trisina Lobe and looking at her wiki page, and so she had a noted ability for blending into crowds. She's noted ability for fucking not being a notable character in a book with a lot of Jedi in it. Yeah,
Star Wars books in general suffer from having too many Jedi. Because you expect Jedi to do something, to be something. And can you tell me what Octa Ramis did in her life?
She was one of Kip's firebrands earlier on, right?
Mm-hmm. Octa Ramis is female, no?
Yeah.
He said she. Yeah.
He said he.
No, I said she.
No, he said she. He said she.
Like, Octa Ramis is a much more interesting character earlier on in the series where she's actually a character. And then she just becomes like, oh, she's on the council eventually. Like, okay. Because I think she was like dating Miko Reglia or something.
Yes.
The one who died in the first book.
Yeah, why not like Corran Horn? Like everyone knows him at this point because he's from like the most loved book series and he's Got-Eye Jedi. Would have liked to see more time with him.
Mm-hmm.
Same with, maybe it's stupid because it's lazy because he was in a video game, but like Kyle Katarn, he's mentioned twice.
Jaden Korr, that's what I was going to say. Like, just put Jaden Korr in everything. Like,
he gets his own duology that we haven't covered yet, so that's going to be...
Jaden Korr, I don't think was invented yet, was he?
No.
Yeah.
He was... When was Jedi Academy?
2005.
Yeah, so he's still 3 years from getting invented. He features
in the Fate of the Jedi, right?
Yeah.
He's in Fate of the Jedi, but he also has Cross Current and Riptide as like his own two books. And they are like absolutely batshit books.
I haven't read them, so no idea.
Oh, it's like his clone, isn't it?
There's clones of him, Luke, Mara. There's clones of everyone in like.
So how many you get in Luke?
It's not that kind of clone.
Luke.
No, they don't. They have like code names. There's like Runner. There's Soldier. There's
Jumper.
Probably Third Eye Blind. Runner. Clone. There we go. Okay, so Runner was a genetic clone of Kyle Katarn.
Do we have a Biter there?
Soldier was Jaden? No, 10th. They probably do have Biter.
Bro, how low on the fucking how many clones you need if you're going to Kenneth Hamner? Like, do we need the Kenneth Hamner clone?
Ron was cloning a lot of people.
Every time you mention what's his face? Kenneth Horn?
Kenneth Horn. Kenneth Horn. Kenneth Hamner or Cornhorn?
Kenneth Horn. You have to mention that he's military-minded or part
Yeah.
of the military somehow. I don't know why that's important, but every time he's mentioned, he's like either in a military uniform or military-minded, something like that.
I
Because
think
there's so many of
Thrawn
them, like
needed
you're
his
saying,
backs
they
with
have to
him.
rely on these tropes for the character, right? Like
Yeah.
Kent Hamner is military guy.
Pop, basically.
Yeah, and then Saba's like a cab and throws him under a hangar door.
Good for her.
Yeah.
Them? Her?
We stand a scaly
That was
queen.
Saba. Saba is like the big winner of NJO. She's introduced here, and she's the one that comes out being like, "You're going to be in everything from now on." I love Saba. Saba's
By the
great.
way, you are gonna kill Abeloth, if I remember correctly. Pretty sure she stabs Abeloth in the mouth.
Everybody does, no?
Well, I think it's mostly her.
Abeloth doesn't really end Fate of the Jedi being dead, though.
No, she was definitely there. That was like step one. She was meant to come back.
Well, they lock her away, and it's like, now this is someone else's problem next time.
Well, they're supposed to go off and look for the dagger.
Yeah, way to
We are
go,
gonna get
Kathleen
to-
Kennedy.
We are going to
You
get to
prevented
that in 2030.
Yeah, we
What did
didn't
you
get
guys think about Onimi? Onimi?
Onimi. Yeah. I don't know.
For me,
remember
the
it being.
weirdest part was him being able to connect to the Force.
Yeah, I remember him being more interesting, honestly. Because he's brought in at the 11th hour, and it's revealed that he's controlling.
The first time, right? Because first time you kind of get surprised, but each time you read about it, it's not as interesting.
Yeah, well, I would have preferred if there was some other reason other than that he tried to. So, for those who don't know, there's Shimra, who's like the supreme overlord of the Yuzhan Vong, and it turns out he's being controlled by his little fucking jester mutant, Onimi, who throughout the entire series has basically been sitting at his throne and making cracking jokes. It's like if it turned out that Charlie had been running my YouTube channels the whole time. But it's revealed after Shimra dies that Onimi is actually force sensitive and has been controlling everything until the very end, and that's why Shimra ends up going crazy because Onimi stops controlling him. And so the Yuzhan Vong lose the force because they basically get stripped of it by. You see, this is the part that I think is just not very well done.
Mm-hmm.
So the Yuzhan Vong lose the force because it's stripped not by Zonoma Sekot, but like Zonoma Sekot's predecessor, and it's like actually
Their
not
planet.
quite the Yuzhan Vong. It's like the Yuzhan Vong like proto species, and like that to me is really messy. And like, how does a planet strip the force? Why does it do that? I don't think that's ever really explained very well, especially considering how important that is to the entire series.
So in the previous stories, we get a few Jedi who are cut off from the Force, but mainly it happens by
Other Jedi, usually.
ritual, right? It's some kind of ritual.
Yeah, or themselves. Usually it's like a mental. But even that is different. Like Revan, for example, is cut off from his force abilities, but he doesn't start to like exist outside of the force.
Yeah, well,
Or-
Mitra Surik and Nihilus are kind of the big two, where they become a wound in the Force, but it's different
Even
from
that's
like,
different.
oh, we just can't sense you. And they also have like, they can't be sensed, but they can be like thrown around and interacted with all these.
Even
Force
that I think is
abilities.
inconsistent because in this one they throw them around, in other books they can't throw them around. Although you can explain sort of that they just kind of got used to it and they can't grip the Vong, but they can grip the air around them.
There's constant scaling problem because at the beginning you need a Jedi Master to defeat any warrior from.
Yeah.
By the end,
I think part of that is also just learning how they all work.
Yeah.
So for me, Onimi being able to connect to the Force makes even less sense because why? What happened that he was the one who was able to?
It
connect?
was.
So it says he can do so because he puts what's it called, a Yamask in his brain, which like maybe the explanation, and like I don't find that to be very satisfying. Maybe the explanation is that like, I'm just thinking about it. maybe it's like proof that the Yuzhan Vong, like maybe that's what it's proof that the Yuzhan Vong had moved past their, like, actually no, that doesn't even make sense, because we learned that the Yuzhan Vong kind of create their gods in order to make up for like their lost connection to the Force, and really their lost connection to their ancestral planet more than anything else. And their original planet was sentient. It wasn't, from what I understand it, Zonoma Sekot says it's like the seed of their original world, but it's not their original world. So it's very weird, and there's a lot of also like religious kind of undertones throughout the whole story, like the Vong's real pain is their separation from, they first call it the gods, but the Force. So it, like, to me it's just really messy, and it never adequately wraps up kind of the big central mystery, I feel like.
Yeah, like the Yamis being grafted onto Onimi, like I feel like the entire time they meant for Onimi to have been this kind of force behind the throne. I think if you read all of his scenes, it does come across to like, why is he so close to Shimra? Why is he always alone
in the previous books?
Yeah.
What's that?
Like I think the plan was
Really?
always that Onimi was in charge, and that's why, because Nominor, all of his scenes in the court, because that's usually how we see into the court, he's always wondering why, like, it's weird that Onimi is here. It's weird that Onimi has all this access to power. I think that was planned from the start. But I do think, like, with the idea of the unifying force, of like Vergere saying like the flaw isn't in the Vong or the Force, it's in you, and like the Vong sense that Anakin has, that they get through like the lambent crystals and everything. I feel like they could have done a better job synthesizing that into like, the Vong weren't actually outside the Force. There was something that was blocking it. Like, sure, you can use this kind of ancestral like Vong blood libel punishment if they wanted to, which is like, it's a stupid fucking mechanism for a planet to use, but like I think you can get there from there to what Vergere was saying and make it clear that like Vong sense was still the Force, just you're approaching it differently. But instead it's like, no, this was actually just this separate power we're never going to talk about again.
Yeah, like we got to flip through our Vong sense. Like, honey, turn the Vong sense on. I need to make a call.
So like the Force doing ancestral punishment is stupid. Like the Sith are more directly perverting what the Force wants, if you think about it that way. If you think about like Vergere's version of the unifying Force, this conception of like not quite gray Jedi, that with the potentium that we're going to be dealing with for the next several books, which I think is probably what we should talk about next. But like the Sith are never cut off from the Force in this way. Like the Force doesn't say, Sidious, you're being a dick and you're misusing me and you're like at least as depraved to them, like no Force for you. Instead, it's like, oh, well, Yuzhan Vong, your ancestors 20,000 years ago did some messed up shit in the Kremlevian War against some robots that are also in this galaxy. So, you know what? None of you can ever access the Force unless you graft a fucking telepathic yam to your head.
But the yam is not able to connect to the Force on its own, right?
No, but it's always been able to sense Jedi. Like when we first get introduced to it, like the closest we get to it is in when they're getting like transported out of the hut space. I forget who's on that. Is that Ganner? It's one of the new characters, I think. Might have been Miko.
I think Jason connects the most during the creation of Yuzhan Vong.
Well, he does that with the World Brain later on, but like we first get it in like when they're training the Yamisks up. I think it's Miko Reglia. When they're coming from Nalhada.
The very first book.
No, maybe it's not Miko. It's in the
Miko
book.
died in the first book.
Yeah. But it's someone else that's on like one of the Kip or Ganner type characters that like connects to it, and like the Yamis are able to figure out that he's a Jedi because he touched it, like he tried to touch it with the Force. So there's like, you're getting towards that, and I think that's why the Onimi stuff was probably planned the whole time. I just don't necessarily think like that it pays off in the most satisfying way.
So I've got a question. Who made the engines on Zonoma Sekot? Was it the weird like robots that are there? Because like the way the engines are described, like when they're first encountered, it almost seems like they're Imperial design, or like they're a common design. within the galaxy. So I don't know.
No idea.
We might need Corey to answer this one. But yeah, so my they things fall apart, put the yam in their brain, and my first thought was, okay, maybe the Force is kind of coming back to him because it's sort of proof that they can move past the rigid dogma of like the religion, where like they've got the 7 cortexes, and then none of those cortexes have put a fucking yam in your brain. But that doesn't really make sense because the religion came after they were cut off from the Force, sort of as a response to that. So
I thought it should be simultaneous, right? The idea that the pain and sacrifice, etc., is more important than life.
Yeah.
So maybe the gods were created at the same time as they were cut off. It doesn't really matter.
Well, they talk about how the gods each like represent one element of their lost world, which again, I don't understand what like a seed of the original world is, and I don't know if they were ever planning to answer that. But
do you feel they've wanted to make more stories about Yuzhan Vong in general?
I think they definitely left it open, and then obviously they didn't. Like they appear in Legacy, and I'm sure they're mentioned a bit in Swarm War. I don't remember, but. Yeah, Corey, who made the engines? Was it the robots on the planet or whatever, or like the weird androids that live on Zonoma Sekot?
I don't know if they actually ever clarify that.
Yeah,
like it might have
I thought
been
planet could move on its own.
robots, but
yeah.
let's see, maybe it's in it'd been built by the Langhisi.
Is that in the source book?
It is in Rogue Planet, maybe.
Okay.
Yeah, Rogue Planet.
Yeah, I forgot that book exists. I guess we'll have to read that soon.
Red-skinned humanoids indigenous to the planet Langhisa, presumably in the Langhisa system. Like the Quella and the extragalactic Yuzhan Vong, the Langhisi could mold and shape life into new forms. They spoke Langhisan.
Aren't there some like robots on Zonoma Sekot too, or am I misremembering
They talk about
that?
cyborgs in this.
Yeah. What the fuck is going on with this planet?
So with the whole it's a seed of Yuzhan Tar, I think that means like in the Kremlevian War, which is the war where the Yuzhan Vong were being bad little boys in their galaxy, fighting Vufi Ra and the behemoth.
Are you making up
Star Wars
versions?
droid? Yeah.
It's the Abominor and what's Vufi Ra's species?
The Lentium.
The Silentium and the Abominor. So shit from like the Ewoks cartoon gets retconned into the things that the Yuzhan Vong fought in their galaxy that made them hate machines. Or sorry, same shit. But yeah, so we know what drove the Yuzhan Vong out of their galaxy, and they're in the known galaxy too. Like we know why they hate robots.
I think the Kremlevian War is supposed to be.
Or that was the Inter-Vong. Yeah, that was the Inter-Vong War.
Yeah, because the robots are the ones that like make them angry, and then once they're angry, they start to kill everything. I don't know who they fought in the Kremlevian War. If it was just
I think it was between themselves and everyone else in the galaxy. But
presumably, like the Chazrak was like one of the ones they. Yeah.
But either way, I think Yuzhan Tar got literally destroyed, and it was a living planet as well. And then like part of the debris is what becomes Zonoma Sekot. I think that's what they mean by like seed, and then like pulls in some other shit, but that's why it's able to be alive.
Just looked up a picture of Yuzhan Tar, and it's just like all gray. Like I don't think that's what the planet would have looked like. It's like gray with the rainbow bridge around it, but
like Coruscant Yuzhan Tar or original OG Yuzhan Tar?
The original one.
From?
It's just like it's from
New Essential Guide to Alien Species.
Okay.
It's funny because the Rainbow Bridge is also the name of the bridge that goes from Niagara Falls to the States. So,
woke. The Yuzhan Vong lost because of woke.
Can't deny it. All right,
they're turning our alien invaders gay.
What is your take, Ilkin, on the unifying force philosophy that Luke is talking about, Vergere, like that comes from Vergere, kind of the potentium? How do you think that comes across in this book?
Comes across as something good, but in a few years we'll learn that it's actually bad because it's what leads Jason to becoming Vader 2.0.
Mm-hmm. Like how on board do you think? So we know what like Troy Denning's version of it ends up being, where it's like there's actually no light and dark side, and like it doesn't matter what you do. Like use the lightning, you're great. But there's right after Luke gives that speech, like there's talk about how the dark side pervades stuff. Like sure, the light and dark side might be
out of his ass.
Yeah, there's that.
Like I like the idea of the like. So one thing that kind of gets conflated is like the cosmic force. The idea of there being like almost a godlike figure, or and like the force having a will of its own, which I think is one part of the unifying force, which we see in this, and we see in arguably all of Star Wars, where it's sort of an explanation for why it's a fairy tale, because you do have this guiding, force that's, helping to control everything, not just from like on a living being scale, but on a grander scale as well. But the idea of like a unifying force where like there is no light or dark side, I feel like that's not the way Star Wars has gone since.
The problem is it hasn't been like that before too. Like for instance, the whole debacle about only dark side users being able to use the force lighting, and only the light side users being able to become a force. Right? You can say that dark side and light side are just philosophies, and the force is just one, and the way you use it doesn't matter. It's not called white or dark or light. It's just force. But if you use certain powers, you basically become cut off from other powers.
Yeah, I don't agree with that. Like that's like I think kind of video game like necessity. But like I also
Sith who became a Force Ghost.
Sorry.
Any Siths who became Force Ghosts?
Yeah, there's a ton.
They
like we just read
around.
Legacy, and there's
not
usually
really
it's like the holocron or something.
Not Exar Kun, right? Exar Kun is not a Force Ghost.
He's like a
the same.
Yeah, they're not really Force ghosts, but
because he's like, so the difference is like a Force ghost is like someone who exists in the Force afterlife but can kind of appear. Where like Exar Kun is like he's stuck like in
he exists like a
spirit form. Basically. But I think if you ask George Lucas, like I know George Lucas comes like he went a lot into like Buddhism and Eastern philosophy when like creating the idea of the Force, and I don't think he would agree with the idea that like anger. So like one thing Luke says is like anger on its own is okay, and it's okay to feel anger, but like you can't be cruel or whatever he says. And like I don't think that's necessarily what Yoda was saying, and I don't think that's what George Lucas was trying to say either.
We should ask Harrison Ford, the one guy who has all
the fuck's a potentium.
Like I have some sympathy for where the idea kind of originates, because like there's two ways it can go, right? Where like there's the way that focuses on the power of like, oh, force lightning isn't evil, and like anger isn't evil, it's how you use it, blah blah blah. And I think that ends up taking Star Wars in the Troy Denning direction that I don't love, and like the Dark Nest and everything that they have to move away from right after. But I think like if you go back to what Verger's conversations with Jason and Luke are, I think Verger ends up being kind of wrong. But I think there's elements of like the dark side and light side. It's not the Force that has like this evil side to it. The darkness is in you. Like it's how you act and how you like trying to put it on like, oh, the dark side is tempting me to this. No, that's not the Force doing that. That is something that is in you that you need to keep in check. Like I think to that extent, there is something of value in saying like there's no dark side and light side. But saying like there's no dark side and light side, so actually your anger is good and it's a valid weapon. That's where I think that Troy Denning completely lost what was being gone for there. But even with that, I think like what Stover was doing, if he was trying to portray Verger as like being correct, he said he was trying to portray Verger as being like the Old Republic Jedi, that the Old Republic Jedi were correct. I think that is still missing something, because it is still saying like, oh, Luke, your anger wasn't misguided because you're using it in a protective way. Like, it's still wrong there, but it's not the Force's problem.
Putting aside the philosophies and going after the consequence, like, would you agree that what Virgil does leads Jason to what he does?
Yes.
Mhm.
So
Supposed to be the
the
implication.
question is the Force always trying to create more orders, maybe by creating an empire? Is the Force trying
Is
to
the Force
create
the fascist?
Yes, basically.
I don't think the Force cares about that. I don't think it's. I think it's
If
more worried about
Force,
the general.
if Force cares about life and sustaining life, shouldn't it care about some kind of order being in the galaxy?
Mm,
I don't think it. I don't
I don't
necessarily
know. I
think
think
in
it
that
depends on the
sense.
kind of order. Like, the galaxy generally is doing pretty well. Like, the individual planets are doing pretty well. You know, people are living. They say even when the Yuzhan Vong are there, babies die, people fall in love, people die. Like, even under the Yuzhan Vong, that happens. But when they talk about the Force, I don't get the feeling they're so worried about specifics. But like, when there is like an existential threat, maybe that's when things start to.
Okay, does Force care about having Jedi?
I think so. Yeah.
So, to an extent, Force doesn't want Yuzhan Vong to win the war.
Probably not, but it's weird because they play like this thing where they acknowledge that the Yuzhan Vong gods aren't directing things like they think they are, but they still say that the Force kind of has this vision, or the cosmic Force has this kind of.
Yeah, so ultimately I think like personifying the Force in the way they almost do, like to the point that it almost becomes the Yuzhan Vong gods with their own like agenda, I don't agree with. I think like fundamentally, coming from like the Force of others thing, like the Force is just all life. So what it's doing, like if it has a will, it's towards the perpetuation of life and not going in the direction that like gets rid of life.
Yeah.
And so that would be the Force's problem with the Yuzhan Vong. I don't think it cares necessarily that there's a galactic dictator. I don't think it wants that.
Yeah.
Like I don't know that it wants in that way, but it's like I've never been able to relate to like the religious thinking of it all very directly anyways, so it's harder for me to
Why doesn't the
really
Force
tease
help
out
starving
what
children
that
in Africa?
yeah, like it's harder for me to tease out exactly what they're going for there, because it's also something that'll vary from author to author. But yeah, like as far as Jason goes, spoiler alert before we get the emails. Yes, Jason does end up falling to the dark side. But one of the things that I've been looking for in this series is like what could contribute to that, because I don't think it necessarily has to be that they are planning to make Jason fall to the dark side. I don't think it.
But there are seeds. There are so many seeds. You kind
Yeah,
of see them maybe afterwards, but it's
yeah.
difficult to miss.
So this is something that I have been criticized before for, so I must get out in front of it. Of like, I don't necessarily like where Jason ends up in Legacy of the Force. He is my favorite character. His arc is my favorite overall. I don't like Legacy of the Force necessarily for exactly what it does, but and I definitely don't think they went through like Schrader. I don't think Matt Stover was thinking like, oh, this is going to be setting up Jason to become a Sith Lord. But if you look at what happens to him, like you can go the direction of he just becomes this Force mystic living in a swamp on Dagobah like Yoda does and becomes one with nature. Or you can look at all this uncertainty he ends up having, the torture that he goes through, his like moment of the fix in the fight with Onimi, where he become like he even says he doesn't think he's going to be able to reach that state of like one like he becomes this glowing force entity that just shreds Onimi, and he thinks he's never going to be able to do that again, but he's going to spend the rest of his life trying to. And like he's always been thinking of like, how can I make the galaxy into what it needs to be, and how can I surrender like my ego, my need to control things, my need to like make sure things are okay without that becoming a problem in and of itself. And then he fails to do that. He becomes the problem.
Yeah.
And I think there's enough that
So
gets set up in
to,
this that
just
works.
to like tell you, you made a mistake. He doesn't fall to the dark side. He's just protecting his kid, so that
Mhm. So it's all
everything is
fine.
okay. Yeah. So
I'm sorry. It was all for Alana, so it's all okay. Like that, I think that is part of it. Where like he has a kid, and that shifts his perspective in a lot of ways. Where he does everything he can to. He gets in the same situation as Anakin, where he gets this vision and he wants to avoid it, and then he thinks like, I'm very powerful. I'm more powerful than anyone else in the galaxy, basically, and I'm the only one that can stop this from happening. And then he goes down this rabbit hole of people who fall to the dark side because they're trying to change the future.
It's obviously like mirrors what happens to Anakin in the Revenge of the Sith. So obviously the books and the trilogy was released almost at the same time, so they kind of mirrored.
Yeah,
that makes sense. But overall, you can see all the seeds of what's going here.
Yeah, I don't even know if it's like seed more implies that like it was a step they planned to take, which I don't know that like I don't think that's necessarily what you're saying, but like just to.
Do you think they decided on it during the Dark Nest?
I think it happened after Dark Nest. I think the way Troy Denning wrote Jason in Dark Nest, Troy Denning then wanted to go that direction. Maybe Troy Denning wanted to go that way the whole time. I don't think a lot of other people did, but I think like Troy Denning's understanding of what other people was doing with him was very limited. Like I don't love Troy Denning as a Star Wars author, but
the Halo people don't love him either. He's nice though. But yeah, you're right. He's got that moment where he does reach his oneness, and he kind of even acknowledges, like, he sees how easy it is for someone with this much power to think that, yep, I know what's best. Let me just take control. And that is exactly what happens in Legacy of the Force, where he's like, I know better. I see things spiraling out of control. They're not going to stop unless I make them stop, which is kind of a similar thing to what happens with Luke in Episode 8 in a way. But yeah, you can see how that leads him down a dark path. But yeah, I don't think it was planned. I think it was kind of a coincidence that works out well. One thing that I was thinking of was reading this book. I don't know if you guys have read it, but it really reminds me a lot of the episode.
Which book?
This book, Unifying Force. It really reminds me a lot of the Episode 9 script treatment that Trevorrow made.
The rebellion on the Coruscant, etc.
Yeah, where it starts with, what's it called again? What was it? Trevorrow.
Duel of the Fates?
Duel of the Fates, yeah. So like it was to start off with, they were going to, first they're going to steal the Eclipse, which definitely doesn't happen in this, but there was going to be a part about rescuing captured people to help inspire resistance across the galaxy. They travel to like this ancestral homeworld, but in that it's Mortis instead. There's the revolution on Coruscant. I think Rey instead kind of has her moment of oneness where she decides that she kind of has her own unifying force thing where she decides that the dark side isn't real. So yeah, I definitely saw a lot of similarities there.
But the end of this one doesn't have Yoda clapping at Jason saying, "Wrong we were, the dark side epic is."
Yeah, I'm reading the Wikipedia page, and it says, Rey arrives at their homestead and vows to teach the children about the Force and how the balance of light and dark will maintain galactic peace.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Like Jason also fries Enel Ka's grandma's mind.
Oh, that's a good.
Yeah, that is a good part.
She
decapitates.
She was deserving it since courtship of Princess Leia.
Yeah.
She's
been.
Look, she sucked, but like Jason.
Oh, he was correct. He was very epic.
He was.
You know what?
Sliding down.
You know what else? I'm just thinking back in Duel of the Fates, they also had a giant ship as a citadel over Coruscant, like Shimra's ship, and Hux kills himself with a lightsaber, kind of like all the Yuzhan Vong And I remember in the script it says Hux realized he lost the Star War, which is funny.
Great.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
they
One thing
have.
that we didn't.
Before it?
Go ahead.
No, I was going to talk about something different.
One, I was going to talk about something. Mine is better.
Go for it.
For some reason, Boba Fett returns in the book.
Yeah, he does.
Like,
And I was like, I couldn't
It's-
remember. Like, who's this guy supposed to be?
when you say that something is Deus Ex Machina, like this one, you know,
Yeah.
like for 5 pages, just out middle of nowhere, just Mandalorians come and save Han.
Well,
Yeah, I
that's
was
the thing with
confused
Luceno, where like you get a lot of the references, but you also get a lot of the references.
Like you
I,
get references to corporate sector, etc. So this is fun because like at least he's paying some lip service to the older books, right?
Yeah.
Still.
I got confused because I was thinking. I remember that scene where the Boba Fett rescues Han, and I was thinking it happened on. I think it's the wheel where Han and Droma get attacked by the giant space worm. I was waiting for Boba Fett to show up, and I was like, "What the fuck?" Like, I thought for sure he was there, but
Yeah, I completely
Yeah.
forgot it was Kalula Station because the
Yeah.
wheel is cooler.
yeah, way cooler.
But yeah, as far as like the parallels to movie stuff, like he goes out of his way, like when they're trying. There's the ship that's infected with Alpha Red that's going to be going into Zonoma Sekot, or they're trying to send into Zonoma Sekot. Wedge gets into his X-wing. He's like, "Who's the squadron that's in charge of intercepting that?" It's Red Squadron. It's like Yavin again, a squad of fighters trying to protect this giant space station. My call sign's gonna be Vader. I was like, okay, well, this is like a little bit on the nose, but okay.
Yeah.
We could have been left to draw some of those comparisons ourselves a bit more.
Yeah.
No, we're not smart.
But as far as like mentions of like the corporate sector go, and all the T-own hegemony is going to be back on the upswing, the Hutts are on the downswing due to their like galactic civilization stocks at the end. When they're doing the fleets at Mon Calamari now, it's like, oh, there's people from Ariadu, there's people from the Habens are there. They mentioned the Chiss as having like a fleet there, more so than just
Yeah.
Vanguard Squadron.
Yeah.
So I thought that was kind of interesting.
Fake.
Fake news,
There's no
Empire of the
cheese.
Hand don't exist anymore,
There's no
unfortunately.
cheese.
sadly.
Jagged Fell just made up cheese in order to become an emperor.
He hit up just so he could not have to hang out with his new girlfriend too
Yeah,
much.
that's it. I'm an
Sorry,
ambassador.
babe, I can't go to the movies. I got to hang out on my snow planet.
He wanted to hang out with Jaina Moore. She didn't want to come to his snow planet.
Yeah.
She wanted to go have a bug orgy with Zek for a while.
That was a thing.
3 books.
It is
That's
kind of
good.
crazy. Like there's 50 pages of wrap up. Basically, there's like the galaxy will never be the same. It may be 100 years before we're back to
Decades
Coruscant. Literally the next scene in a book. We jump forward 5 years. So, anyways, the Jedi Council that you've never been introduced before is meeting in the Jedi Temple on Coruscant. Like, okay,
Speaking of,
Yeah, we're-
fine.
speaking of bugs having origins, why the fuck does Alana get a seed ship from Zonoma Sekot?
why not?
Like this is, I don't know why, but that annoyed me more than anything else.
Alema hasn't
Because-
done anything wrong yet. Alema's fine.
Yes, but I know that she will do so much stuff, and every time she's mentioned, it will like she with her dancer figure, something like that.
She lost her sister.
Yeah.
Isn't that Star by Star, I think?
Numa. Yeah, it's
Oh.
Alema and Numa that get introduced with like the Voxen.
I remember her sister has a very painful death.
Yeah.
Probably
They're on there
deserves
with-
it.
She gets like her arm I think she gets her she gets like Voxen blood or Voxen spit or whatever all over her. Nasty business.
It's a shame. She's one of the more tragic. Like Tahiri, I think, takes #1 spot in tragic Star Wars characters, but Alema Rar is up
No.
there.
Oh yeah.
I think Tahiri has a good ending here. It makes perfect sense that she will find peace, etc. And then 2 series later, she's basically a drug addict.
I mean that's life, isn't it?
You don't like.
Not in my province.
You don't get over stuff. That's the thing
Yeah.
that Star Wars always struggles with, or Star Wars fans especially. Like for your story, yeah, it's nice when people get over stuff, but people don't get over stuff. They're always looking
I
for that
remember
hit of,
Alima Rara gets really bad. Like she's pretty messed up later.
yeah. She suffers
really
the
dark.
most as Bug.
Yeah.
Does she die in Dark Nest, or does she?
No,
She one of the ones
because
that
remember
gets
she ends up being even worse afterwards because she works for Lumaya.
Oh right, yeah. She dies. Yeah.
I can't remember if she's missing a Leku now, but I'm pretty sure she also gets an arm cut off.
Yep.
Yeah.
Later on. But yeah, she turns like really evil, like dark Jedi.
Yeah. But Raynar Thul gets rehabbed.
Yeah. He's got a pretty bad one too.
But if you're like a lot of the new characters they'd introduced, they have a rough life.
Yeah, I mean Raynar Thul gets his face melted, so not great.
What do you guys think of Harar?
I like Harar, but I
like
Harar now.
I like Harar, but I think he accepts his entire world being
it's a retcon. Like in the first books, you don't see him having any kind of. I actually believe in something else. I actually don't think we are doing well, etc. You don't see that. It's later retcon basically.
Yeah, well, I think he's a little too accepting of his entire religion and thing he's dedicated his life to being turned up.
Zonoma Sekot has engines, and he's like, yeah, that's perfectly good. I love it.
Yeah, we
Is
famously
he like, I love it though? Like, I feel like he's more. It's not that everything I've known is false. It's that Shimra has perverted everything we know.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think there's a good 2 or 3 books worth of him like slowly coming around to what we're doing is fucked up. Not necessarily that like his religion is false.
Yeah,
he does come around like faster than you'd think, but I think it's. I don't think it's like out of left field so much. Especially if he's always been a bit against Shimra.
Like, to me, he doesn't really start to stand out until Final Prophecy. And I know he's in the entire series, but yeah. I like him, though.
It's like you get, with both him and Pellaeon, you get some of the actual turning against the more problematic parts of their beliefs. Pellaeon's not about to go home and kill all of his little flowers.
But he gives them support to it.
Yeah. That's what I'm saying. Like, Pellaeon... This is where we start seeing Pellaeon like actually come away from some of his authoritarianism and grossness. This is where Pellaeon turns over his new leaf.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and he's still got another 20 years alive, believe it or not.
Is it 20? No, he's only
another
10.
15.
It is kind of weird, though.
Yeah,
he says it's only 5 years ago that they were signing the treaty on their flagship. But that was, like, the war started it was 10 years ago, because it was 19 APY. So, James Lucino, loon your fucking lore, buddy.
Yeah. Yeah, it was like 5 years before the start of the war. Because I did that in my head, and I was like, oh yeah, that's right. And then I was like, no, it's 29 now, not 24 anymore.
Yeah.
So, get it together.
Story group's problem. I don't think every writer should know it.
Timothy Zahn would have known it.
No.
Well, I guess we talked about the length a lot. And I guess the biggest comparison to make with new canon is, of course, the High Republic. Mm-hmm. So, like, format-wise, High Republic does split things up between, like, there's the comics, young adult book stories, adult books, and, like, phase 1, 2, and 3. Well, they're all kind of telling the same story. There's more standalone arcs there, or maybe they're not. Maybe, like, compared to the trio, the trilogies, duologies, whatever, with the New Jedi Order, how do you feel that compares? How do you think that format works?
I think it works a lot. I still think after all these years, like, I still think the High Republic is really lacking direction. Like, and maybe it doesn't, it serves a different purpose, but you say, like, what's the point of the New Jedi Order? It's the war against the Yuzhan Vong. You say, what's the point of the High Republic? Maybe it's designed not to have a point and to just explore an era, and that's fine.
But its point is to defeat the Nile, right?
Yeah, but then you ask, like, who are the Nile? And it's like, they're just kind of like pirates. I don't know.
Same thing. You don't know who Yuzhan Vong are until the very end of the.
But I mean, you can
Basically-
still say they're invaders from outside the galaxy.
Think they're being hated.
I mean, yeah, I think there's more to what we know about the Nile earlier on than what you're saying there. But like, just in terms of the format, do you think the story split up more? Like, so
Enjoy is
when
better in terms of format because I like when structured like that.
You like which one?
New Jedi Order is better in terms of its format.
Mhm.
Structure is much better.
Funny, 'cause that was actually
I feel like dividing the series into different age groups, into different mediums is not the best way.
It's funny because I was thinking I wish we had more different perspectives for this. Like I would have liked
So
more comics or more.
Let me rephrase it. So there's a difference between, let's say, having a game that has, let's say, 1, 2, 3 characters who do their own thing.
Mhm.
In the High Republic, the problem is that at some point you introduce the secondary villains, and most of the events with them happen off screen.
Mhm. Yeah.
That's
the
what's the
Drengir?
problem.
Yeah, because if you just only read the adult books, the Drengir are like hardly in it. They're like most of the Drengir stuff is in the younger books or the comics. Because
Yeah.
I knew what the Drengir were because I watched some of like Alex's videos, but I hadn't read all the younger books. I was like what the fuck is going on here?
But I think that's also like down to very specific execution. Whereas, like, if you
Yeah.
think about when the High Republic wraps up, I don't necessarily think that the final book in Phase 3 is going to have the same load to, or the same burden to carry as the Unifying Force does.
That's a good point. I agree with it. Like, basically, we need to do 3 things. We need to end the Nile thread. We need to learn who Mark and Roy is, and we need to learn how to deal with the leveler.
Yeah.
Nameless. So
Yeah, like
it's
I
a bit
think
easier, yeah.
maybe what I kind of get and maybe the usual or the New Jedi Order could have benefited from fewer must-read books. Like maybe there's a way to do the New Jedi Order over 3 years where instead of having 19 books that you need to read to tell the whole story, maybe you have 7 or 9, and then you have lots of smaller stories that you can still read. Like Force Heretic, for example, maybe you cut the stuff for Zonoma Sekot out of that, and maybe Force Heretic, for example, doesn't even need to be a young reader book. It's just like because a lot of the young reader books in the High Republic aren't significantly different from, or different at all, really, from the main line. I think they do it for that purpose. So you can, if you do just want to follow the main stories, you can just. There's what 6 or 7 now.
Yeah. Like so yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking. Where like, it's not that the young reader stuff is necessarily less important, but like, you could have the Force Heretic stuff be this trilogy that gets referenced in the other stuff, like, oh, Han and Leia are off doing this thing, and obviously that's where like Zonoma Sekot comes in. So it's not like a 1-to-1 just port that over structurally, but I think there is a way to divide it up a bit better that I think High Republic benefits from, that NJO could have gotten a bit more out of. But
Yeah, and then I think you can also keep the journey of the main characters a bit cleaner as well, and maybe just keep everything a bit like that's just when I read through all these books, I'm like there needs to be some streamlining, especially like for the first third. Like I like Dark Tide and I like Vector Prime, but they're just parts of the like I look and I'm like, what even happened here? Like I know generally, but some of it ends up being a bit mush.
If you look at it as a like historical epic, it actually makes sense because like you get back and forth, you get counterattacks, you get different situations during the war, so it makes sense. But in terms of story, again, you are correct. Some stuff is not even memorable at all. Like again, I have read the series 4 times now, and in the middle book, some you can't ask me what's happening in any of them. Just doesn't stack. Maybe like Star by Star, you can't forget it because like middle point and it's kind of like high point.
Yeah.
But overall, each of the books can be cut for time.
Or I was thinking maybe next episode we should just do a new Jedi Order final thoughts video, just so we don't have to squeeze it all into this one.
Yeah. I mean, next one's probably going to be Skeleton Crew, but we can do after
Right.
that.
Let's
More
go.
Jedi NJO recapping.
Yep.
I'm excited for Skeleton.
Me too.
But I guess on that one we can maybe talk about. There was a thing I was going to bring up that I've now completely forgotten about. But, the darkness, like how dark NJO gets to something else. I think that we'd get a lot of mileage out of that. But all right, do you want to jump to our rankings?
Yeah, since you guys will not invite me to the recap episode.
Okay, do you want to come to that one?
Yes, I don't. But
yes, you don't.
I don't mind.
Okay.
So
Saw the smile creeping up on your lips there. No.
The book is A. The book is really good. The series is B.
Oh, so you're putting Unifying Force above. Okay, interesting. So Justin, when I was
Are you
filling
trying
out this
to annoy me right now?
What's that? Are you what?
No, that's fair. Like, I can see where you're coming from with that.
It's a good book. Like, especially I loved the main character interactions. I loved, because I'm a Vive guy, I loved Han and Leia interactions. I feel like they're really well done. I feel like the action is really well done. The battle scenes are really good. Maybe more in some places would have been better, but overall, like, it makes sense. It's very good in many aspects.
Right. I agree. So when I was making the line on our spreadsheet, Justin, I absentmindedly filled in your score.
What'd you put?
So I just put B for you.
You know what? Because I love this happy ending, I'm actually going to give it an A.
All right.
Yep.
So, all around.
I'm giving it an A because it does a pretty good job of wrapping things up. It's very long. It's 550 pages or so. I got to give a shout out to the Hidden Gems YouTube channel, which hosted the full unabridged audiobook, which was 20 hours long. But without that, I would not have gotten through it because I've been super busy.
Are they reading it themselves?
No, so I think they are. Well, it says if you enjoy the audiobooks we create, so it's possible. I think that they are the Library of Congress audiobooks for people who are hard of or who have poor vision, but I'm not positive because I know those do exist as well. If it's not those, I had a torrent of them all back in the day, but yeah.
Right. I'm gonna go A as well. Like you said, it's long. It's very long. It might be the longest book we've done on the podcast.
I feel like
one of the longest
Thrawn 2 might. I think the Vision of the Future.
But those were bigger. Vision of the Future. I was thinking like Ascendancy trilogy.
Oh fuck! Don't remind me.
They are so boring. Oh my god.
They are. Holy shit.
Vision of the Future is 528. This is longer.
So it might be less boring if they are like TV show. Like in a book form, Ascendancy is just bad.
I think the Vision of the Future audiobook is 28 hours long, if I remember correctly. Vision of the Future. It is 26 hours long.
Lesser Evil is 576 pages.
Fuck.
The other two are 400.
Never reading that again. No hate, just
no love either.
Yeah.
I like them more than you, but I still not that much more than you.
So for books that we need to read, I would like to, before we get back into the Swarm War, or get into the Swarm War, I would like to tackle some canon novels. I would like to do Star by Star.
Lost Stars.
Lost Stars, story. Yeah, let's go back and read Star by Star again. Speaking of long books. No, I'd like to read Lost Stars. I would like to read Thrawn, which I believe we've never read, right? I think we read... Did we read one of them or no?
I don't think we did.
And
maybe we did Thrawn, maybe.
I don't think we did the original one, like Thrawn 1.
Then we didn't do any of them.
and we probably should later do Aftermath. But I really want to do Lost Stars for a palate cleanser, and I would like to do Thrawn 1.
I have a proposal.
The way the schedule is working, Lost Stars will be done February 14th. Let's go.
So what if instead of doing that, we just do a New Jedi Order reread and see if we feel any differently about it the second time around?
Yeah, so in 2027, that would be when we're done.
Yeah, I guess with Aftermath is going to be more relevant now. There's the comics coming out, and there's going to be stuff coming out with like the
about those comics.
I don't know. Should we just do Aftermath first, and then try to make Lost Stars line up with Valentine's Day?
Maybe.
Or I can just kick you
I want
off
to read
and
something
I'll
I was
get
gonna.
Alex on for that one.
I want to read something I was gonna like, but maybe. Let me think about it.
Okay.
I need to, like, you don't understand. I need to mentally prepare myself to read fucking Chuck Wendig's writing.
It's not that bad.
Dude, it's so fucking bad.
It's not that bad. Come on. Like
It's
I know that he has an annoying writing style, but like in terms of books, the books are fine. They're okay. They're not that bad. Many fun things are happening there.
So I got when I got back into reading Star Wars books, I took a long break. Like I'm talking years. Well, then
that's why
like,
it took us so long to read NJO.
Yeah, law school, undergrad, did not read very much Star Wars. The first book I read when I got back was fucking.
Have you read much law books during that time?
I read many law books during that time, unfortunately. But when I read Aftermath 1, I wanted to fucking throw that book so many times. It just pissed me off. But maybe I'll feel differently this time.
So just tell me the truth. Are you just annoyed because one of the characters is gay? Is that it?
Yeah. No. The more gay characters, the better. Make a rainbow bridge around every Coruscant. That's what I say.
Yeah, it's any lumping in of you with the anti-woke crowd is one of the most unfair things that's ever been done on Twitter. So,
yeah,
I'm still trying. I'll get there. I promise. Just give me.
No, I mean, Chuck Wendig at times, like on that point, seriously. There have been times at Star Wars canon where they go for representation, but not in a meaningful way. Where like there'll be in like the opposite example of this would be like Alphabet Squadron, which has meaningful like gay relationships, characters are gay, and like it's not. But Chuck Wendig sometimes is like kind of the gay aunts writer, where like you put the gay aunts in, or other times in Star Wars canon where like they don't meaningfully write gay characters.
When you say gay aunts, do you mean like your parents' siblings, or do you mean gay aunts as in like you're trying to contact homosexual ghosts?
I mean your mom's sister and her wife, but yeah,
not
also
your
the
mom's,
gay
but
seance.
in general.
What's that? Yeah. But yeah, we'll see. I don't remember if Chuck's like that, but there have been a few Star Wars canon books.
His representation is fine. He doesn't go like too much into.
I'm not saying don't go in. I'm saying the opposite. Like
it's fine.
It's the same thing that like Star Wars, like Finn should have been gay. Like Finn and Poe, the actors wanted it. Most people wanted it. It would have been fun, and like they just, I don't know.
And then we would never have heard the end of it.
We still haven't heard the fucking end of it. What difference would it make? How much louder could they be?
Yeah.
Well, the point is that the whole like the series doesn't work because these two are gay would have been like central point of the conversation. Like I promise.
Yeah, but maybe that would have been helpful.
Doesn't matter. Like for me, more representation is always good.
The thing is, like Poe and Finn, despite people's issues with the sequel trilogy, like people love Poe and Finn, and like
yes,
even the people like yes, people would have complained, but on the other hand, all those people hated Rose, so it would have been like he disliked Rose so much he's gay now. So like,
do you guys think Rose was added by the studio or by Johnson himself?
I think Johnson.
Yeah, I don't think he said he didn't. There wasn't a whole lot of.
There was this moment people were like, okay, he was added just so Finn is not gay.
No, I don't think so.
I don't think that was the impetus for it. Like, I think like any romance directly between Finn and Poe would have had to come in episode 9 because they were like just getting introduced in episode 8, so you weren't gonna get that. Like, stuff needs to evolve.
No, I like the idea of one night stand.
Yeah. I mean, it's a big galaxy.
So to conclude, Botans did nothing wrong. Arcry forever.
No.
Yes,
We'll talk about that more next week. maybe.
I'm sorry, but
For next time.
killing 360 something trillion beings, you don't get to survive in that galaxy. Go away at the very
Well, they're in the unknown regions. We won't see them again. Don't worry.
We will. But,
until the comics, right? Legacy of the
Yeah,
Yeah.
well, they kind of everyone's mad at them again in Legacy.
Yeah.
We covered this.
Suddenly.
We did Legacy Part 1, so it's not really spoilers. We've already talked about it on the podcast. Like, the Vong were trying to fix some of their planets. The Sith messed it up, and now everyone wants to kill the Vong again. And there's going to be Vongarella. We haven't dealt with Vongarella yet. But yeah, so that is, I guess, going to do it for the first part of our NJO wrap-up. Next week will be Skeleton Crew. I don't know if that'll end up being the Thursday time slot or if we want to do it a bit earlier because we'll be coming out on Monday, so we'll see about that.
Yeah, we'll probably be doing streams anyway, so we might as well.
Yeah. Week after will be New Jedi Order wrap-up part 2. I'll forget that I wanted to talk about it, so if anyone wants to just yell in chat at that point, talk about if Star Wars got too dark. Week after that is probably either a book or legacy comic. No, that'll be... We got to do Skeleton Crew every week, actually.
Mhm.
So there's always
It's a good
Skeleton
break
Crew.
for the kind of the rest of the year,
So,
really.
Yeah, we'll see. We should do a book in December.
We'll see.
What I said.
It was fun, guys. Thank you for the invitation. I really enjoyed talking to you.
Thank you for joining us, Ilkin. We'll see you for the NJO wrap-up part 2 in 2 weeks.
2 weeks.
Yes.
2 weeks.
Give me a second. I need to change.
That's how long you're staying on Mars as well? 2 weeks.
No, I can't do it in 2 weeks. Sorry,
Can you do it in 3 weeks?
I can't do it in 3 weeks.
Okay, so December 19th, we'll have some more thoughts marinating on the New Jedi Order.
Well, let's just not make any plans for December 19th, but
Okay.
but allegedly.
We'll do another NJO podcast at some point with all 3 of us. We did Vector Prime, we did Unifying Force, we did Star by Star together. Those are the big ones. It only makes sense that we're all together for more NJO talk. If it happens farther into the future, that's fine too. Next week is Skeleton
Perfect.
Crew for sure, though. That's the only thing for sure. Anyways, thank you again, Ilkin.
Thank you,
for
guys.
everyone listening.
Bye-bye. Send us your emails.
We'll actually read them next time.
Tapcaf
I love
transmissions.
emails. See you guys. Bye.
I love emails. I'd love to receive one someday.